Thanks for all your support on this project. Everyone knows how much you contributed. Helena Dre winked at me as she clicked to the next slide. The boardroom erupted in applause. My strategy, my numbers, my 483% quarterly increase that I had bled over for 7 months. And there she stood, soaking up praise from the entire executive team like she had birthed this miracle herself. I watched the CEO lean forward, genuinely impressed. Helena, this retention approach is revolutionary. How did you develop this methodology? My hands gripped the edge of my chair as she launched into my story. Every detail I had shared with her during our supposed collaboration. Every late-night insight I had confided. Every breakthrough moment I had celebrated with her over lunch. She spoke about my client relationships like they were hers. Described my innovative follow-up system as if she had created it from scratch. Even quoted my exact words to difficult customers, presenting them as her own wisdom. The worst part? She believed it. I could see it in her eyes. Somewhere in her mind, she had convinced herself that supervising my work meant creating it, that reviewing my reports meant generating the ideas within them, that being copied on my correspondence meant she had written those messages herself. The key, she continued, gesturing enthusiastically, was understanding that retention isn't about discounts or incentives. It's about making each client feel personally valued through customized touchpoints that acknowledge their specific business challenges. That was my philosophy, word for word from the presentation I had given her 3 weeks ago. But as I sat there, fury building in my chest, I remembered something she had shared during lunch just 2 days earlier. Something that changed everything about how I would handle this betrayal. Before I dive deeper into what happened next, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're listening from? Because I want to know where my story is reaching. And please like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because what I'm about to share with you is unlike anything you've ever heard. My name is Olivia, and I need you to understand something about Helena that makes this story so much more devastating than typical workplace theft. For months, she had been opening up to me during our lunch breaks. At first, I thought we were becoming genuine friends. She would talk about her daughter, Melody, with this heartbreaking mixture of love and desperation. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since Melody discovered that Helena had been lying about a promotion she claimed to have earned through honest hard work. The truth was messier. Helena had taken credit for a junior colleague's project, received recognition, and built her entire success narrative around that stolen achievement. When Melody found out during a family gathering, she was devastated, not just because of the lie, but because her mother had been lecturing her about integrity and earning what you deserve while literally doing the opposite. Melody cut contact completely, returned birthday cards unopened, refused to answer calls, changed her address without sharing the new one. For 3 years, Helena had been writing letters to Melody's best friend, begging her to pass them along. Letters promising she had changed. Letters describing her career growth and personal development. Letters claiming she had learned to succeed through genuine effort and honesty. 2 weeks before this quarterly presentation, Helena had come to lunch practically glowing. For the first time in 3 years, Melody had responded. She was willing to give her mother one chance, one visit to see if the person Helena claimed to become in those letters was real. They had scheduled the visit for exactly 3 days after our quarterly meeting. Melody would come to the office, meet Helena's colleagues, and witness firsthand whether her mother had genuinely transformed into someone worthy of trust. Helena was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. She kept saying this was her last opportunity to prove she had grown, that she needed everything to be perfect because Melody would be watching for any sign of the old patterns. As I watched her bask in applause for my work, I realized something beautiful and terrible. In exactly 72 hours, when Melody arrived for that crucial office visit, she would meet colleagues who would naturally want to discuss the amazing strategy her mother had just presented. They would gush about Helena's brilliant insights. They would describe my methodology in detail, praising specific techniques that only I could have developed. But here's what made this perfect. Melody would immediately recognize the pattern. not because she knew anything about business strategy, but because she knew her mother. She would hear colleagues describing approaches, innovations, and client interactions that sounded exactly like the kind of detailed, authentic work that couldn't be stolen or fabricated, the kind of genuine expertise that takes months to develop. And Melody would remember the last time she had heard people praise her mother for achievements that seemed too comprehensive, too detailed, too perfectly executed to be anything but someone else's authentic work. The best part? I didn't have to do anything at all, I just had to wait. But waiting turned out to be torture. For 3 days, I watched Helena practically floating through the office. She had printed copies of the quarterly report to show Melody. She kept rehearsing how she would introduce her daughter to the team, how she would casually mention the strategy's success, how she would finally prove that she had become someone worthy of respect. She even cleaned her entire workspace, organized her project files, and prepared what she called a portfolio of recent achievements to show Melody. Every document in that portfolio related to my work, but Helena had genuinely convinced herself these were her accomplishments. I started to feel almost sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered sitting in that boardroom, listening to her claim my innovations as her own discoveries. I remembered the CEO asking if she had considered applying for the director position that would open next quarter. I remembered her accepting praise for late nights she had never worked, for client relationships she had never built, for problems she had never solved. The morning of Melody's visit, Helena arrived early. She wore her best outfit and kept checking her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She had planned every detail of the day, from where they would have lunch to which colleagues Melody should meet first. At 10:30, I saw a young woman with Helena's eyes and her father's stubborn chin walk through our main entrance. She looked nervous but determined, like someone who desperately wanted to believe in redemption, but had been burned too many times to expect it. Helena practically sprinted to meet her. Their hug was awkward, tentative, but real. I could see 3 years of pain and hope colliding in that moment. "I'm so proud you came," Helena whispered, loud enough for me to hear from my desk. "I'm proud you invited me," Melody replied carefully. "I want to see who you've become." Helena beamed and began the tour she had meticulously planned. First, she introduced Melody to our department manager, James, who immediately launched into enthusiastic praise. "Your mother just delivered the most innovative client retention strategy we've ever implemented," he said. 480, 3% increase in quarterly performance. Absolutely revolutionary thinking. I watched Melody's face carefully. She smiled politely, but I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition that she was trying to suppress. "That's amazing," Melody said. "Can you tell me more about what made it so innovative?" James was happy to elaborate. He described my customer interview process in detail, explained how I had identified patterns in client departure data that nobody else had noticed, praised the personalized communication system I had developed based on individual client preferences and business cycles. As he spoke, Melody's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The polite smile remained, but something behind it grew cold. "It sounds incredibly detailed," she said slowly, "like it would take months of dedicated research to develop." "Oh, absolutely," James agreed. "Helena spent countless hours on client analysis, late nights reviewing communication logs, weekend calls with difficult accounts. The level of personal attention she gave to each relationship was extraordinary." Helena glowed with pride, completely oblivious to the growing tension in her daughter's posture. Next, they visited our analytics team, where Helena introduced Melody to our data specialist, Carmen. Carmen immediately wanted to discuss the retention metrics. The breakthrough moment was when your mother identified that our highest risk clients were leaving not because of pricing or service issues, but because they felt like just another account number, Carmen explained enthusiastically. She developed this incredible system for tracking personal details about each client's business challenges and incorporating that knowledge into every interaction. Melody nodded thoughtfully. That sounds like it would require very personal, one-on-one relationships with each client. Exactly, Carmen said. Helena spent hours on calls with these accounts, learning about their specific needs, building genuine connections. She has this natural ability to make people feel heard and valued. I saw Melody's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. She was connecting dots that Helena couldn't see. The final stop was lunch with our senior sales team. Helena had chosen this group specifically because they had been most vocal about praising the strategy's results. She wanted Melody to hear firsthand how her work had transformed their client relationships. The genius of Helena's approach, said our top performer Derek, was how she taught us to remember personal details about each client's business, not just their contract terms, but their challenges, their goals, their industry pressures. She created this whole system for tracking and utilizing that information. It sounds very comprehensive, Melody said. How did she gather all that personal information initially? She actually conducted individual interviews with our highest value clients, Derek explained. Spent weeks reaching out, building rapport, asking thoughtful questions about their experiences with us. Then she analyzed all that feedback to identify patterns and develop the new retention protocols. Melody set down her fork. Individual interviews with how many clients? 47, Derek said proudly. 47 detailed conversations that formed the foundation of the entire strategy. I watched Melody's face and saw the exact moment she understood. Not just what had happened, but who her mother still was after 3 years of promises and letters about personal growth. Helena was telling a story about her recent client success when Melody quietly interrupted. "Mom, I need to use the restroom. Could you show me where it is?" They left together, and I knew I would never see them return to finish that lunch. 20 minutes later, Helena came back alone. Her face was pale, confused, devastated. She sat down heavily and stared at her untouched food. "Where's Melody?" Derek asked. "She had to leave," Helena said quietly. "Family emergency." But I had seen them through the window, standing by Melody's car in the parking lot. Melody speaking calmly, while Helena gestured desperately. Melody shaking her head with finality before getting in her car and driving away without looking back. Helena didn't return to her desk that afternoon. She sent an email saying she felt sick and would work from home the rest of the week. But the most beautiful part of this revenge was still coming, because 3 days later, I received a call that changed everything I thought I understood about what had really happened. "Is this Olivia?" "This is Melody Carter, Helena's daughter." My heart stopped. How did she get my number? Why was she calling me? "I got your contact information from the company directory," she continued. "I need to talk to you about what happened at the office visit." I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near our building. When I arrived, Melody was already there, looking exactly like she had during the office visit, but somehow older, more tired. "I know what you did," she said simply as I sat down. My stomach dropped. Had I been too obvious? Had she figured out that I was the real author of the strategy? "I don't understand," I said carefully. Melody smiled sadly. "You exposed her. You knew she had stolen your work, and you knew I was coming to visit. You let me discover the truth myself, instead of telling me directly." I stared at her, unsure how to respond. "The thing is," Melody continued, "I already knew she hadn't changed. I came to that office hoping to be wrong, but expecting to be right." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages from someone named Jason. "This is my mother's former colleague from her last job. He reached out to me 6 months ago because he was worried about the letters she'd been writing. He wanted me to know that she was still doing the same things, still taking credit for other people's work, still building her reputation on lies." I felt the ground shifting beneath me. "Then why did you agree to visit?" "Because Jason told me about you. He said there was someone at her current job who was brilliant, hardworking, and probably going to be her next victim. He was right, wasn't he?" I nodded slowly, my mind reeling. "He also said you seemed kind. That you actually listened when my mother talked about me during lunch. That you probably didn't realize she was setting you up to be her next source of achievements. Melody leaned forward. I came to that office to warn you. But when I saw how perfectly you had orchestrated her exposure, I realized you already knew exactly who she was. I thought I was protecting you, I said quietly. I thought you needed to see the truth. I did see the truth, Melody replied. But not the truth you think you showed me. She pulled out another phone, an older model, and scrolled to a voice recording. I recorded our conversation in the parking lot. Do you want to hear what she said when I confronted her? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded. Melody pressed play, and Helena's voice filled the space between us. Melody, I know how this looks, but you have to understand something. That strategy, those client relationships, that whole approach, I didn't steal it. Olivia and I developed it together. She did the technical work, but the vision, the philosophy, the core insights came from our collaboration. Mom, they described individual client interviews, personal relationships, months of dedicated work. And I supervised all of it. I guided her approach. I shared my experience with client management. I taught her how to build those relationships. Just because she did the hands-on work doesn't mean the strategy wasn't mine. You're doing it again. You're taking credit for someone else's accomplishments. No, Melody, you don't understand how business works. When you're in a leadership role, the work your team does reflects your guidance and vision. That's not stealing, that's management. Melody stopped the recording. She genuinely believes this, Olivia. In her mind, supervising your work means she created it. Reviewing your reports means she authored the ideas. Being told about your client interactions means she built those relationships. I felt sick. Not because Helena was lying, but because I could hear the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't consciously stealing my work. She had somehow convinced herself that watching me succeed meant she was succeeding. There's something else, Melody said softly. Something Jason told me that I think you need to know. She hesitated, then continued. My mother has been doing this her career. Not because she's lazy or malicious, but because she genuinely cannot distinguish between witnessing excellence and creating it. It's a psychological pattern that started when she was young. Melody showed me a photo on her phone. Helena as a child, maybe 8 years old, standing next to a science fair project. This was her project in 3rd grade. Except it wasn't. Her older brother built it for her because she was struggling in school, but she presented it as her own work and won 1st place. The praise felt so good that she convinced herself she had actually done the work. She remembered helping with research, asking questions, being involved in the process. In her mind, that meant she had created the project. I started, then stopped. Because suddenly, everything about Helena made sense. The way she talked about projects she had supervised, as if she had personally executed every detail. The way she described team successes as individual achievements. The way she seemed to genuinely believe her own narratives. She's been chasing that feeling ever since, Melody continued. The feeling of being recognized for excellence. But she's never learned the difference between contributing to something and creating it. Between being part of a team and being the driving force behind success. I thought about all those lunch conversations. The way Helena talked about her career highlights. She never claimed to have done work she hadn't done, but she consistently described collaborative efforts as individual achievements. She genuinely believed that her involvement meant the success belonged to her. So when I confronted her in the parking lot, Melody said, I wasn't angry about the lying. I was heartbroken about the delusion. What did you tell her? I told her that until she could see other people as separate from herself, until she could recognize excellence without claiming ownership of it, we couldn't have a relationship. Because I refuse to be another achievement she adds to her list of personal successes. Melody paused, then asked the question that changed everything. But here's what I need to know from you, Olivia. Did you orchestrate her exposure to hurt her? Or did you do it to protect me? I thought carefully before answering. Both, I think. I was angry about her stealing my work, but I was also genuinely worried about you getting hurt again. And what do you think happened as a result of your revenge? I considered this. She lost the relationship that mattered most to her. She kept the professional recognition, but lost her daughter. Melody shook her head. No, she lost the fantasy that she could have both. She lost the delusion that she could build a relationship with me on the same foundation of borrowed achievements that she used to build her career. I don't understand. Olivia, my mother was never going to change. Not after our visit. Not after 100 visits. She's incapable of seeing where her contributions end and other people's begin. You didn't destroy her chance at redemption. You revealed that there never was a chance. Melody leaned back in her chair. The letters she wrote to me for 3 years were full of stories about her professional growth and personal development. Every single story was about team projects where she had played a supervisory or collaborative role, but she described them as individual achievements. She was trying to rebuild our relationship using the same pattern that destroyed it in the first place. So you were never going to reconcile with her? Not unless she could learn to see me as separate from herself. Not unless she could love me without trying to take credit for who I've become. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that my revenge hadn't actually destroyed a possible reconciliation. Sadness that Helena was trapped in a pattern she couldn't even recognize. There's one more thing, Melody said. I want to show you something she sent me 2 days after our office visit. She pulled out a handwritten letter and placed it on the table between us. Melody, I know you're disappointed about what happened during your visit, but I need you to understand something. The strategy that everyone was praising wasn't just my work. It was inspired by thoughts of you. Every client relationship I built was practice for rebuilding our relationship. Every communication technique I developed was preparation for learning how to talk to you again. That 483% increase wasn't just a professional achievement. It was proof that I've learned how to value people, how to make them feel heard and appreciated. Everything I've accomplished in the past year has been motivated by my desire to become someone worthy of being your mother again. I stared at the letter in disbelief. Even after being confronted with the truth, even after losing her daughter again, Helena had found a way to make my work about her relationship with Melody. She turned your strategy into a love letter to me, Melody said quietly. In her mind, your months of client research became her journey toward understanding how to communicate with her daughter. Your innovative retention techniques became evidence of her personal growth. Your professional success became proof of her emotional development. I struggled to find words. That's actually brilliant in the most devastating way possible. Melody nodded. She's not lying when she writes things like this. She genuinely experiences other people's achievements as stepping stones in her own personal narrative. Your client interviews became her practice sessions for talking to me. Your retention strategies became her relationship advice to herself. So your final answer to her will be nothing, Melody said simply, because there's nothing left to say. She's shown me that even confronting her with absolute proof of her pattern won't change it. She'll just incorporate the confrontation into her story of personal growth and professional development. Melody stood up to leave, then turned back to me. But I want you to know something, Olivia. Your revenge was perfect, but not for the reasons you think. You didn't just expose her to me. You exposed her to herself. For exactly 72 hours, she believed she had achieved the success and recognition she'd always wanted. She thought she had finally become someone worthy of her daughter's respect. And then she discovered that even her greatest professional triumph couldn't build the foundation for the relationship she wanted most. Not because you sabotaged it, but because she had built that triumph on the same pattern of borrowed achievements that destroyed our relationship in the first place. Melody smiled sadly. She got everything she thought she wanted. The recognition, the praise, the career advancement, the chance to impress me. And she learned that none of it mattered because she still doesn't know the difference between earning something and taking credit for it. After Melody left, I sat in that cafe for another hour, thinking about everything she had told me. My revenge had worked exactly as planned, but the result was different than I had expected. Helena had lost her relationship with her daughter, but she had also lost the illusion that professional success could compensate for personal dishonesty. The next week at work, Helena returned from her sick days and acted like nothing had happened. She continued to reference the strategy as her achievement. She applied for the director position and received it based largely on the success of my work. She even mentioned during her promotion announcement that the project had taught her valuable lessons about leadership and team development. But something fundamental had changed. I could see it in the way she looked at her new office, in the way she accepted congratulations, in the way she talked about future projects. There was a hollowness to her satisfaction that hadn't been there before, because she finally understood what I had learned months earlier. You can build an entire career on borrowed brilliance, but you cannot build a life on it. 6 months later, Helena received another letter. Not from Melody, but from Jason, her former colleague, who had warned Melody about her patterns. He was writing to inform her that he had been documenting her history of taking credit for other people's work and planned to share that documentation with our current employer. Helena's response surprised everyone. Instead of denying the accusations or fighting the evidence, she resigned. She left a note saying she needed time to understand the difference between contributing to success and creating it. I never saw her again, but Melody called me once more, about a year later. She's in therapy, Melody told me. Real therapy. Working on understanding why she sees other people's achievements as extensions of her own identity. She sent me a letter apologizing not for the specific lies, but for being unable to see me as separate from herself. Are you going to respond? Maybe. Someday. If she can learn to love people without taking credit for who they are. As I'm sharing this story with you now, I realize that my revenge taught me something I hadn't expected to learn. Sometimes the most devastating punishment isn't destroying someone's career or reputation. Sometimes it's giving them everything they think they want and letting them discover that they still don't know how to be happy. Helena got the recognition, the promotion, the professional success she had always chased. But she learned that achievements built on other people's work feel as empty as they actually are. If you made it this far in my story, I hope it meant something to you. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel, because sharing what happened to me has helped me understand it better. And maybe, somewhere out there, someone else needs to hear that you can't build authentic success on borrowed brilliance, no matter how convincingly you tell yourself the achievements belong to you.